But yeah, man. It's been yeah busy couple of things for me. I won't talk about it particularly on here, but yeah, the one on Sunday might need to get a bit pushed back a week that we were planning.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll let you know about that off this. Let's just go make sure this is actually working.
And yeah, it was so odd with the live V4V one. I was just was like because it was like an hour later, and I was trying to just jump back on to see if you're still doing it, and then I could just hear other people talking. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
Karen must be like playing someone else.
Nah. It's just the live stream. I've just joined the Blueberry one. They've kind of like done it out of nicety. Yeah, that's maybe one thing to do far down the road. Not
Yeah.
anytime soon. Yeah. I think this is going pretty good on the YouTube. So let me just do our little social posts on the Discord and on Twitter. I'm gonna have another try at Nosta one.
You are.
Yeah, it'll be my probably like third or fourth try at seeing if I can get it going.
What's prompting you to do it again?
Because of the value for value show, and because of a Bitcoin guy I met at the last Bitcoin meetup, and he gave me some tips on how to get better relays to actually make it all work better. So I just haven't had time to implement it, but it's kind of nice. The value for value show is kind of prompting me to. It's like forcing me to do these things, which I've kind of just been.
Would you put away back? Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
it's just on the back burner, you know. So it's kind of like forcing me to just go like, all right, come on, hurry up and do it. So I'll run the Swen, and I'll just or could you get your backup audio recording as well, please? Oh shit. Here we go. It's my backup
sweet.
recording.
Can you still hear me all right?
Yes, so I think so. Can you speak a couple?
Cool.
Did you get lesser in volume just then or something? I'm not sure. The setting is just how loudly others hear one. Are you playing with that thing on the side?
Can you hear me all good still?
Yeah.
There, cool.
Yeah. Were you just playing with that thing on the side there?
Yeah, just saying to see if I could make it so that it would maybe not pick up as much of the background.
Well, it seems to be going okay now. So it was just before I definitely heard myself a little bit. All right, cool. What are we? Musings. Let's see if we can get this going. Let me know if you can hear this or not.
We all can be mortals.
Welcome, mere mortals, to another episode of the Mere Mortals Musings. This is indeed where Juan and I get together, and so this is Kyron here on the side, and Juan.
You got Juan over on this side.
Oh, the deep voice, I love it. And a musings episode is where we pick a topic and talk about it in detail. This is one I actually know quite deeply, and is probably going to be more of an explainer for Juan because he's not as involved deeply into this. We're recording here on the 6th of September, 2023, a live episode. So if you ever do feel like joining us, we are live on a Wednesday, 8 or 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So the topic for this week is V4V music. Juan, are you pumped? Are you excited?
I'm pumped. I think in the not in like an opposite way.
All over this. I know Juan's not gonna.
No, it's like in an opposite because you're absolutely right. I think my default thought here, which could be quite a lot of other people as well, was wait, let me look into the reasons as to why Spotify or other equivalents aren't going to work. That's basically what my investigation path was when you told me that.
Yeah.
So, and I guess that, and also I went, hasn't someone already done something for this that hasn't succeeded?
Okay.
Or just hasn't been picked up as well. And so
interesting. Yeah.
I kind of came across it from that perspective. So if you could sell me on the V4V music being kind of like the thing that's going to solve it,
sure.
I guess that's how I'm going to come at it.
Yeah. All right. Sweet. No, that's a good perspective to have because it is definitely a topic I get excited about and maybe overly excited. So what spurred this was there's a couple of episodes recently that I did on the Value for Value podcast, which was all about this kind of new trend and new technology that's being used. And I'll explain some of the more core concepts soon. But even if you go back to, I believe, it was a solo episode. It was definitely a solo episode I did, and I think the reason was because you were at VCon. So I'm saying this is back in, when was that? 2022? You went there? May? No, 2021. No, I can't even remember.
2022.
2022. Okay, so about May of 2022, I did an episode called, I believe I called it Decentralized Music, and it was a similar concept to what I'm going to talk about now, but it was way less progressed. It was nothing back then. So
Hmm.
essentially, I guess like his how I'll lay it out and get into what actually is V4V, value for value music. So I think it starts off with a problem, and the main problem at the moment, I would say, is that musicians aren't getting paid. From just the general talking of people I've met online and in real life, I guess. There's a couple I know, real life musicians. It seems that the way that they are trying to monetize their profession, or what their hobby, whatever you want to call it, their music, their creations, it's a struggle. It seems like a real struggle, and especially just with, in comparison to perhaps something like podcasting. Even if you look at just the streaming rate, or the cost per thousand CPM, they get from Spotify's accounts about $2 per thousand, whereas for podcasting, if you're going to use advertising, it's probably closer to like 20. So you can see there's a pretty big gap there, just in terms of the actual music being delivered in an online format, and the money not making its way perhaps to the people who are creating it, and it's being kind of chewed up in other areas, because there is a lot of money in the music industry. And yeah, so I think this is sort of, you might have heard this, perhaps. One, I don't know actually how much you've heard of musicians and what their general feel is, but I've also heard things like a reason a lot of them tour is because that's where they actually make their money, through merch sales and through sales of like physical CDs and albums and things like that, and vinyl. Why vinyl was making a bit of a comeback. Have you heard any of this? Is this anything that's ever popped up on your radar?
It has popped up in a way because I guess the most famous in the media recent one was Taylor Swift's big going around all over the world stages, and then being able to give back something like $70 million to her crew from basically sales of the tickets that she was going around.
Oh, I haven't heard that. I've heard of the portion where she had to re-record all her masters to get basically access to her own music again, because it was technically owned by someone else. And so
Right. Okay.
it was the
No. So
exact same songs, but she just re-recorded them, and then now they're magically hers again.
Wow. I guess this was more on the acquiring money, right?
Yeah,
So obviously the outcome for them is making more money. For Taylor Swift, it was going around and doing these great tours and making obviously so much money that she's able to give millions of dollars back to her own staff. So, yes, it's kind of known that they make a lot of money in the touring, and that's why you see older musicians, AC/DC, well, probably not AC/DC anymore, but other older musicians, Metallica, it's still touring. You see, what's that big Australian singer who always says like, there's my last show ever, and he's been doing like 20 shows.
I don't even know who that is. John Farnham or something?
It might come to me as we're talking through, but in essence, yes, that plus merchandise and more physical sales, that's where they're making all their money, not in particular digital sales.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why it's well understood. And this is where some of the research I was trying to do was, well, is there an alternative in the digital sphere currently that exists that they get paid at least better than 0.0014 cents to basically to the play, all the way up to 0.0084, I think it is, the maximum pays. And I was having a look. There's Spotify, there's YouTube Music, there's Apple Music, there's Apple. There's a few kind of like different ones, which there are other platforms that offer a higher bit rate or higher other abilities to listen to the audio, and so you charge slightly more and you give more to the artists. But in the end, it's not, it's not a differentiator of like 10x. It's 2x, not 10x or 100x, which is going to shift the conversation for some maybe up and coming people or artists to just make a living.
Yeah. And so just to put some perspective on these numbers, however big you think we are, we're probably earning about $2,000 a year just based on the amount that people are donating in at this current moment. If the amount of effort that we're putting in, and if we were getting like 200 a year, it would certainly make a big impact on like long-term viability of, okay, is this actually sustainable? Do we need to actually focus more on growth? Do we need to do it? So it actually does end up impacting, I suppose, your decisions a lot based on how much you've kind of got coming in. The kind of funny thing is the problems and solutions seems to lie both with the musicians, in that they seem to be willing to put up with so much. Like if I was getting these tiniest amount of royalties from my own stuff that I've created of, I think the numbers around the kind of 10 to 20% range, I would certainly just be like, fuck this. Like what's the point? I'm just all of my hard work is being chewed up elsewhere. But they seem to just keep going at it, and it's almost like the desire to be a musician is much stronger perhaps than it would be to be a podcaster. So this is where you hear stories of Ed Sheeran doing like 300 plus gigs in a year, just every day, going to multiple things, in that kind of desperation mode to kind of make it big. You rarely hear podcasters of doing something of the similar ilk. But so there does seem to be a thing where it's like musicians want to be musicians, and they will like put up with a lot of bull crap to do that. So essentially what V4V music is, it's the same concept as value for value podcasting, which is I rely on my audience. I provide the value up front. In this case, it would be music. And I just ask that the listeners send this back. And now the ask is a bit different, but it's the same concept of, a voluntary trust of the goodness of my fans. And, most of them would know this kind of already, because there is already this relationship of selling to your fans. It's not like where we go out and sell podcast episodes. No podcaster when they start off does that. And there's there's nothing equivalent to that. There's it's like unheard of. I don't know of anyone who's paid for like an episode. But there is already this kind of knowledge that they get paid by their fans, not via through advertising, which is one of the core ways that it's done through podcasting. And so, relies on listener support, and it's essentially the same thing. You create an RSS feed, you put your music into this, or the links to where your music is, you put a value block in, so a lightning address for people to pay you to, and then it's the same thing. People can send in boostograms, stream sats to them, basically the exact same thing, but obviously the I suppose how you ask and make people aware that this is a way that you want to be supported is a bit different. So yeah, there's the essential thing. Basically most of the other things are the same. You got to require good podcasting content to do value for value. Well, you got to have good music. You got to have that kind of technical know-how of knowing exactly what you want your audience to do, and it's essentially the same thing. You're putting your music out there, and they're very used to this. Musicians they're desperate to get their music heard and just in front of people, and so
yeah. Well, and here's my first two I guess not punches, let's say stabs at the V4V music heart. And I want to kind of play through this philosophy to kind of understand whether it's a flaw in my thinking, or it's a flaw in the logic of what the ask is from both a musician and the person who's listening to it. So let's go first on the musician side, and then we can try to articulate for value for music. So if I was to think of a musician and I go, they probably want to create some money. Sorry, they want to create music because maybe one, it's their passion and they really love it and they want to do it. What's the percentage likelihood, do you think, of musicians out there who want to just create music and for them to earn just average earning? Just they want an average salary for the rest of their life doing music. What would you say a percentage out of all musicians would be? Aspiring musicians.
I think it would probably be the same as podcasters, to be honest, which is you're going to have your hobbyists who will do it for free. And even if they never earn a cent, they'll keep at it. There's ones who it would be nice to earn something just to cover the basic costs of hosting. There'd be probably ones who are like, if they have some extra pocket money, this is kind of cool. And that's probably when you're getting to the area of, okay, could I make this actually a full-time gig? Is that possible? And then I don't know how many I would put in the camp of they're trying to make it full-time. I would say probably about the same amount as podcasters. So I'm like pulling a number out of my ass here, but 10%, less than 10%, maybe. I'm not sure.
They're trying to like actually make it as their full-time gig.
Yeah.
And see that's interesting because if that's the case, because in my mind I thought it would be almost reversed in the sense of if there's people out there, especially who are generating music that, so if the battle is, hey, I want to get it listened on Spotify and Apple and I want people to be seeing it, and you're talking money, then intrinsically in my mind I go, okay, well, if you're thinking money, it's probably that they're not just looking at purely just want to get like, your average income. They want to go, okay, well, I want to get lots of people listening. I want to get the maximum amount of money that I can get. And so my first one, I guess, in my mind, I go, and maybe this is where we need someone who's listening to us right now, right? If you're a musician or something like that, let me know. Because this, I don't know, given I just don't know many musicians, nor do I know the polls for this. But would Valley for Valley, first of all, be able to even give what people are aspiring to? That would be like my first query. Let's just say there's the up and coming Jay-Z.
Yeah, if
is he going to be better off going down Valley for Value than he's going to be down the path that might be existing?
No, if you want to be a billionaire, if you want to be a millionaire, Value for Value is probably not the way to go. Almost certainly not the way to go. In that case, you would probably want to go the more traditional route of becoming a global superstar hit. And yeah, that's where it's that's a risky route to take, right? Not many people make it through that meat grinder.
But that's the important. This is good. This is the important differentiator that I think most people sometimes don't see with when we just talk about Value for Value in general, and even the Value for Value specifically here for music, is that, and this is why I think things like Spotify won't go away in 10 years. There'll be something equivalent for that, and it won't be just purely Value for Value. In that there will still be people out there who want to be living like the superstars and be the millionaires and billionaires, and Value for Value is not going to enable that. It just won't allow that on its soulness.
Yeah, I wonder also if that's this is probably getting slightly off topic, but if that is doable in the future as well. There's you hear people bitching and moaning about how there's no general consensus in a country anymore because all the media has been distributed and broken up so much. There used to be 3 radio stations, or there used to be 3 TV stations, and they'd all play roughly the same news. So you're all like on the same board. You all have the same kind of narrative, whether it be true or not is kind of irrelevant. And so I just wonder, is the pop star, are pop stars as big now as they were in kind of like the Michael Jackson day? Is there anyone who is the equivalent of Michael Jackson now? Ed Sheeran maybe, but I don't know if it's possible to actually go that route, and Value for Value is more just like a side effect of that perhaps being less of a thing. And just to clarify, I don't think Value for Value will take over everything. I just think it will take a lot of things.
Well, and I think my question, and that this is where it's like it's uninformed in terms of the polling of like musicians, but if you had to ask me, I'd go, if you were to give someone who was aspiring musician, like a young artist, the opportunity to say, hey, you can go down this Value for Value music route and put your things out there and foster your community and like 1,000 true fans, and you'll make a good 60 to 80 grand a year, and maybe even more if it goes really well and if the volume of that increases. But that's what you can expect. Or you can try your luck and maybe 1 in 10,000 you'll get it, but you'll be a billionaire and you'll be respected worldwide, and we'll be able to get you everything that you want. Something tells me that just in general pop, they might go down the latter path. Go, okay, let me try. Let me try and shoot for the stars and see what happens.
Yeah, this is maybe where it would be the differentiator between podcasting and music, which is music tends to be a more collaborative affair. There's a lot more technical. You can be one of the biggest podcasters and have a team of 2 or 3, like Tim Ferriss does, maybe even less. He probably doesn't even need that if he really wanted to. If you wanted to have the crispest, just best sounding music, I don't know if you can get to the very upper echelons of the music industry. Maybe. I mean, the technology has gotten better nowadays, and you hear of artists like Flume, an Australian artist who kind of made it big just through what was it? It was in a CD that he got in a Nutrigrain or Kellogg's box or like a cereal packet, and that's how he learned to mix stuff for the first time. And I think Billie Eilish was a very similar story, where it was like her first breakout album was her just recording in an attic with her brother, that sort of deal.
And I also think in saying all this, that the concept of utilization of value for value for music will, I mean, at least in my mind, it's never like that's only the only thing you'll do. As in, I think for a lot of musicians, it would be you can use that, and you'll use all the other platforms, whether it could be existing Spotify's or the social platforms, to share your things, or to go, really wild and views on a TikTok with your music or something like that.
Yeah,
that I still would say it's going to be a thing.
Yeah,
it's just another stream.
Correct. And I've got a story about a musician who was kind of like the breakout musician in value for value music, and she very much is along that sort of line.
Okay, actually, can you tell us that story? Because I think my second one around consumption of music is where I'd wanna poke at it some more.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's look at behavior wise. So in terms of what's been happening with value for value music over the last 2 months, is some new tech has come out which basically enables you to switch the wallets, so that if you play a song in your podcast, so for example, if I were to play a song right now, any money that anyone is sending to us at the moment would go to the musician instead, and then when their song ends, it would come back to us. So it's kind of like a wallet switching technology, if you want to put it that way, which then allows you to start doing things like radio shows where you're kind of a DJ, and this is kind of where Adam Curry came in with Boostergram Ball, which was the first one which really used this. And he's a really good DJ. He used to be MTV VJ, so he knows all of this stuff. He used to do radio before that. And you can create essentially radio, which no one doubts is a powerful mechanism. It's still, if you get in your car, that's probably the number one thing that people turn on and listen to. And so one of the musicians who he played not only just on that show, but in kind of testing out this stuff in podcasting 2.0 was called Ainsley Costello. And she's a young girl from Nashville. She's still a teenager. I think she's 17 or 18. I can't remember exactly. And basically she had this one song called Cherry on Top, kind of like an Avril Lavigne type vibes.
Yep, I've heard it.
Yep. And it was like the breakout hit. They played it, people were loving it, sending in large boost amounts. I think she got about 1 million sats in like 2 weeks or something, but in a very short amount of time, and dominated the charts. And her reaction to it was like, holy shit, this stuff's amazing. One, I'm getting paid finally. Like the amount she got paid was the equivalent of like 2 or 3 years on all of the other platforms combined. So it was like, oh wow, this is actually something here. Still relatively small amounts, $500 Australian, something like that. And but she, the way she reacted to it was like, you see it on Twitter, and she's like a machine now, reposting, tweeting stuff, being like, this is how you connect with your audience, you know, really pushing it. And so this is where it's just like, okay, you only need 10 musicians like this, and she's a good musician, like it's a great song. And she's got others as well, which are also great. And this is where you can see, like, okay, maybe if you have 10 musicians, and you know, she tells her friends, and then they tell their friends, like, oh, this is actually happening, this stuff is working. It's kind of like the snowballing effect is kind of what I would put it. So yeah, I'll stop talking for a bit and let you react.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try and play this apart. So be aware, folks. Juan's coming out of this with trying to pick this apart as much as possible, so we can get at the very evident value within value for value music. Because let's not disagree, right? Absolutely, with someone who I think that the latest that I saw, she'd actually put that video up on YouTube of the like the actual song, the cherry on top, and I think it had 1,700 views.
Yeah.
So when you think, you know, on YouTube, they're going to get fuck nothing in terms of money. Same thing goes with Spotify or on all the other players. But all of a sudden, you've posted it somewhere where you can actually make, some decent cash in probably in the equivalent amount of plays. It can be very easy to then assume, well, if that explodes to 100x, then shit, that's going to be a lot better than if it exploded 100x on Spotify. My first point here being, and again being very clear, is that I think it's good that was able to be happen. But I'll give you some personal opinions. I hated that song. I listened to that song.
Well, I'm such a hater, man.
I am a hater. I think
anyone listening to music,
I can tell you,
anyone listening to this, have you ever heard Juan talk good about a song?
But I think, and you'll see it come full circle in terms of users. Didn't like the song. Didn't like it as a singer. I think I was comparing here to Paramore and a few others, which I went, well, damn, they're way better. Why would I just listen to that? The video edit quality wasn't good. Didn't match up to the voice. I'll get to why I'm sort of saying it in this way. But even then, she found people who were willing to be able to contribute in a value for value way because they enjoyed that song and gave it the right amount of money. And as you say, it's prompted her to go and do more. Which, if it might have been without that opportunity, she might never have done that. And so it begets the following action, which is a really good thing for value music in that regard. The problem I see here is in the reality of, okay, if the mindset is, and maybe you can help me in what you've seen in some of the conversations around maybe still sticking with artists. Do you think her mentality or the mentality for the artist would be, this is fantastic, value for music. I really want to continue on this path because I can see that I can put out, again, another 10, 20 songs, an album, and I maybe get 2-3x multiplier on this, and it can become something that I can do either as a hobby or as a full-time gig. Or is it I'm getting good money, and the equivalent money here is of like that one song is like if I'd gotten 100x of over on Spotify, well then shit, what if I just make it 100x over here and all of a sudden now I'm making real big bank? Where do you think it sits between those two? Help me out here.
Neither of those, to be honest. And I think it's because even though the selling point is the money, that is a side effect of better things. So she appeared on Cole McCormick's America Plus podcast, and he had an interview with her. And one of the things she was talking and that she really got hyped about and was plainly obvious was she loves the creation and act of it and interacting with people. And so she had the story of how she went to like this kind of kids camp thing. Somehow they'd heard of her music before that. And so she was performing in front of these kids who all knew the lyrics to her songs, or at least one of them, and were singing along to it. And she's just like, oh my God, this is the craziest thing ever.
If she's not doing it though, if that's like, say, and we talk about optimize things, there is a very real possibility she could have been listened to more on traditional platforms versus value for value music platforms, given that it's a more niche style platform. Was there a consideration then fuck the money being gotten, but I can get it 10x listened to, but at least more people can hear it?
I would say it's once again it's the being able to see and feel that you're being listened to. So
Right.
the difference of 1,000 plays for us on Spotify, which we kind of have gotten through the book reviews,
Mhm.
because your David Goggins one kind of took off, versus 1,000 on Fountain is radically different, because I
Absolutely.
actually know that people are sending they're sending comments to us and on Fountain through the use of boostergrams. They're like the activity you I think musicians probably have the same feeling that we kind of have as podcasters, which
Mm.
is you can put stuff into the void and it's just you have no idea, even if you see the numbers on the charts going up and they're higher, you know, there's no difference between that and a bot listening to it if you don't get any feedback from it. So I think it's like the feedback mechanism was probably a pretty strong point. It's probably about as much weight as we put on it. We talk
Mm.
about value for value. I talk pretty deeply about how it changed my behavior, how it made me feel, but the money's a pretty big aspect of it as well. So it's kind of it's kind of like both of those, and I would say she's probably
Yeah.
in
Okay.
in roughly the same camp
Okay. No, this is helping. This is
as
helping
perhaps
me
we would.
kind of craft the mindset of like who would suit Valley for Valley Valley for Valley music. And I want to ask you a little bit about, well, you've already had a big Valley for Valley music kind of conversation podcast out there, folks. If you want to go and check that out for a lot more detail, I think it was a Wav list.
Wavelake is the
Wavelink.
so that's basically the place where you can upload your music as an artist if you own it. Please musicians, own your own music before putting it up there. Don't put up other people's or covers or things like that. And that's
Wait,
also a
why?
I'll get to that in the
Okay,
kind of tech section.
cool. Okay, yep.
And the so you can go there, and then it's also a place for people to listen to it. So it's kind of that, it's sort of like Spotify, I guess. Musicians can upload their stuff. It's more in the background. The front
Okay.
page is
Okay, well,
designed for
that's a very dangerous statement you make. You just walk straight into my
into
final
your
here
trap.
prod
Oh
here,
no.
which is you've triggered my trap card, Karen. As a customer, right? And so you've currently, as we've been talking, folks, and if anyone's worked in VCs, venture capital, you're selling a pitch deck and whatnot, you've done the very big erroneous problem where you've talked the tech up. You talk the tech and what it can do, and this is the features and this is the functions. But as a user, so as an average user who listens to music, what do you think the number one thing is that they care about, truly care about?
Oh, that the
Like you wake up in the
when they
morning and
press
you want to
play, it
listen to some
works.
music. Hey?
When they press play, it works. That's probably the
Yeah.
number one thing.
Yeah. So in general, and I had a quick look at this, right? It's quick, it's good bid rate, or like it sounds good, and you can operate it very easily in a movable way, right? I'll tell you what. I had a bit of a look at the ways you can play some of the Valley Five music. It's just not easy. It's just
Yeah,
not
true.
easy to get onto it. And now, again, there's not a caveat because we say this about when we talk about Valley here in this podcast. Yes, we recognize it's difficult. This is one of the key fundamental problems I still see in conversations when it goes to something like Valley for Valley music, Valley for Valley in general. It's that it's not a honestly the technology's there, and that's one of the things I kept researching was honestly there isn't anything else out there that's solving this. This is what solves it. But it is a dilemma of, well, okay, sales pitch. What's it here in for for an end user and then consumer? There is we've talked about it on the podcast. It's receiving comments. It's receiving obviously value that you wouldn't have otherwise. So those things are really massive to me as an artist, and obviously to be getting comments or send comments and get them in return and get talked about. But as musicians, you're going to be sending a comment to someone and how are they going to reply unless they've got a format in which they have a podcast where they're talking about the boostergrams or something like that, right?
Yeah.
You might not see it. So for an end user, I want to go to the gym and I want to put a gym playlist. What incentivizes me to go use a Valley for Valley music?
So I think
platform?
it'll probably start off with the DJs and radio stations, and this is where kind of like Boostergram Bull, why would anyone listen to a radio station for, like, do they listen to a radio station for the music, or do they listen to it for the people presenting the music, or is it a combination of both? Because it's obviously very popular. There's no doubt about that. So this is where I go, okay, the feedback at this very stage, at this earliest of the stages, this is essentially us talking as we were 2 years ago about boostergrams. And I did a little comparison in the latest stats, value for value, where it was 2 years ago there was 60,000 sats flowing through the podcast apps per day. That's like a boost for us on a good day. So you can see how this sort of stuff changes pretty quickly. The incentive for the user would be, I suppose, the radio station being able to send a boost into the radio station, and this being, there's a couple at the moment. You can see it in like the thumbnail that I put up. And if you go to the value for value show, I listed out a whole bunch of them. There's 8 to 10 of them at the moment, and probably I know there's a fair few more people trying to do it. It's the same thing, the feedback loop. You get to send in a boost to the show, and you can request a song, and the DJ will play that song. It's I suppose the same mechanisms that made radio really, really popular, which was, they had call-in lines. Well, a boost is kind of like a call-in line in a certain respect. So that's probably the way it'll start. I think there will probably be some changes to how the music is presented. And I think there'll be some innovative way. This is where I'm kind of like relying on innovation a little bit. I had a couple of ideas of how it might happen.
The more I hear you talking through about it, though, I go, it doesn't sound like what a younger generation would do, though, right? And so I'm thinking, because again, we're talking this is very early days
generation, man. We don't need them. There's
well, but what I mean, right, is Valley for Valley music is evolving, and let's say it evolves to and we're talking like a really powerful, well-functional, has a lot of the draws that you would have of an equivalent app out there, right? Because you want it to be accessible, you want it to be on demand wherever you need it, and all the good things, and not break, etc. So say you have that, right? So then it's a competitor to the existing models. I just don't see how in those models you would see a return to something like the radio hosting and people sending through the request for, okay, can you put the song, when what I've seen of the last, how long has it been? 15 years, 17 years since social media came out, and a lot of the actual Spotify's and Apple music has come out as more and more and more and more towards being on demand, right? Being able to choose for you. I would actually say what it's going to become, it's going to be, shit, don't even think about it. We'll just measure what the hell you're feeling like at the moment based on your hormones or something like that, and we'll just play you some music. Apple's come out with an app around this where on your watch, it'll tell you what your mood is. And in turn, we'll figure out what noise it should be playing. I think it's going to be more down that path than it's going to be anything about, hey, I want to request a radio station. Like, I want to request someone to go play something by me sending money to someone to go and do that.
There'll certainly be at least portions of that. Spotify also has those radio DJs. You heard that thing? So it's basically exactly what I was talking about, except the DJ is now like, oh, all right, so you like that song just there, we're going to bring this up for you, and this is like the latest song by Drake, blah 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 blah. And it's essentially, replacing what Adam Curry's doing, but it's a AI. It's just a bot, and you can still kind of hear it in the voice, but it's relatively good. It's not a super jarring experience. You kind of,
I mean, that sounds cool. Like, I like it. I like the idea of it. That sounds like a funky thing to try, but it doesn't sound like a selling point.
Well, that's a Spotify thing. That's not a value.
No, and sorry, but what I mean is, like, that doesn't sound like a selling point at all. As I just seem like a funky thing that Spotify is doing. if you were to tell me that, oh no, that's one of the selling points of why people would want to use value for value music, I go,
No. This
well,
isn't
that sounds
related to value for value. This is what I'm saying. Spotify is doing. They're focusing more on the what you were talking about, the algorithms, the AI, the being able to create it and put it, just up in your face, like the latest. It doesn't even matter who created it. There's no connection between you and the music. It's essentially you're just listening to it.
right. Okay, sorry, gotcha. Okay, which and one thing which you may have seen as well. I don't know how this connects that much, but I saw that YouTube Music just recently updated, so you can see comments on YouTube on like
Yes,
songs
I
as
saw
well.
that. Yeah.
Which I think that was pretty cool. Which I was like, oh, that's kind of so. Where do you see that in the comparison of Boostergram
I
to a comment on direct one?
I think that's getting closer to the value for value. It's being able to connect more with the, why would someone leave a random comment on a YouTube music video, like on a YouTube music thing? Like what's going through their head when they do that? They probably want someone to see it, and it's kind of like perhaps it's a signaling thing, perhaps it's it gives useful information, that sort of stuff. When I think of what you were talking about with like the AI and the music just being played, you don't really give a shit. It's just for your mood. There's no connection between you and the music. Sure, there's a ton of that, man. There's a room for that and a place for that, but is it going to be the predominant, or is it still going to be people wanting to connect with the musician, connect with the do people prefer that? I don't know. This is kind of like a bet on the future of humanity, I guess. Like, are we going to get dumber, more numbed? Maybe dumber's maybe not. Well, in a certain sense, are we going to get more numb to the things that we're consuming and view everything as disposable, as everything as kind of cheap, whatever? I'm not going to pay for this, even if I'm paying for it in like the back end with my data or things like that. Like, I don't give a shit. Or do people want those connections? I'm betting it's going to be more people want those connections, and that's kind of why I would think value for value music would take off. And once again, it's like, say there is an app which is closer to, so once again, probably doing the not the right way of selling it if I was selling to a VC firm or something, but imagine Spotify, but your $9 a month, whatever it is you pay, I think it jumped up to 10. That now is split up more evenly to the artists. It's just more fair distribution. Almost exactly the same type of experience, but the musicians are getting paid more. Of course, they're going to tell their audience to go to that app and use that one in preference. All of this sort of stuff, like I get you coming at it from a like that analytical business development, coding, user experience world, because I've never been in that myself. I suppose the way to think about it, though, is it's not one app trying to dominate the market. That's probably not what will happen. It's, there's going to be niche ones where it'll be a podcasting and a music app. There will be one which is a music app. There will be a music app which is, suited better for showing the album art and things like this. I think that stuff will happen. You've kind of see it with the podcasting apps. There used to be 6 or like only a couple of ones. Now there's 12 plus. Podfans is going to come out with their mobile one, and it's probably like one of the slickest looking in terms of the
how it operates. Yeah. But I mean, it's a good call out. Actually, let's talk through it we'll go through the Boostergram Lounge, and then we can get into this. You can give me an example of, where can people sort of tune into V4V music and a few other things.
Yeah, and some other kind of like problems, and even I suppose what I've noticed with my own behavior. There's a couple of things there. Yeah.
But of course, so talking about we're talking about Valley Valley here, so obviously music, but we are a Valley Valley podcast, and we do read out the Boostergrams that we get as well during these live episodes here at 7 p.m. So I'm going to go through and find some of these ones. Now, where are we at? We're at 6th of...
Yeah, so what I can tell you is Dave Jones. So usually when we miss a boost from him, it's kind of my fault. Not my fault. It's just the technology that we use in the back end didn't capture it or things like this.
Mm-hmm.
I have looked in like all of the places to make sure, and if it didn't work, then it's just like I would have to be, code wizard extraordinaire to have found this. So I'm pretty sure that he didn't boost for this week, which is hilarious considering he is so close to 1,000,000 sats.
1,000,000 sats as well.
So no shout out for Dave Jones this week, unfortunately.
No shout
Sorry,
out.
Dave.
But weirdly, we've just shouted him out because of that reason. So there you go. All right, so we got 3. We've got one here from Peter. I realize this kind of goes against the ethos of the show, but I've always felt that running any distance over 10 kilometers is a net negative on the long-term health of my joints. Am I wrong in thinking long-distance runners are knowingly damaging their body to accomplish their admittedly difficult physical goals? That's 1,000 sats sent using Fountain.
And that would have been on one of your running.
Yeah, and look, I'd agree. I would say, well, any distance over 10 kilometers, I think that very much depends on your body weight, your bone density from when you were younger, and how dense your bones got. There's probably a case to be said that, could you get just as much benefit if you'd run sub 10 kilometers than running 50 kilometers for things like your VO2 capacity and your HRV, just your base heart rate and other things? Probably. You probably don't need to. I think it's just more a mentality of, hey, could be funner to go longer. Why not? But I would stick to Peter. I think if you're wanting to, in fact, specifically though, he says long distance runners are knowingly damaging the body to accomplish their admittedly difficult physical goals. Yes, but if you're looking at optimizing more specifically for reducing the amount of damage on your body, there's probably other things as well that you would do. Maybe you wouldn't even do running. You'd probably just do cycling or swimming. That would be even better on your body. So it goes, you don't have as much gravity or as much impact on your body, and you can do it in other ways.
I wonder how knowingly it is, because one of the reasons I stopped playing soccer at 20, and then I tried one more year when I was 23 or 24. It was just hurting, man. It would hurt my joints. Every game I would come into it just sore from some groin niggling injury, something in my knee, some whatever. And I purposefully stopped because I just went, man, this is hurting me. That's not worth the payoff. But so many people in my team who were in their 30s and were experiencing that, but 10 times worse, I never got the feeling that they considered it as a knowingly damaging their body sort of thing. I always got the feeling it was kind of, sure, it hurts, I'm getting older, but that's just what happens, that sort of deal, without much forethought to how I'm going to be when I'm 50 or 60, that sort of deal.
Yeah, I don't think it's super conscious for most folks, to be honest. Just do it until you break type of deal.
Yeah,
that's just more the mentality.
Yeah, definitely.
I appreciate it,
Thank you,
Peter, for that one. We've got another one from MCOT. He says, great episode to reference for the new Bitcoin users. The perspectives from a few years of casual experience resonates with a wider, inexperienced audience. Cheers. And that's 456 sats sent using Fountain. Very good. That's basically what we wanted to get out of that particular episode of Bitcoin.
Essentially, yeah.
And Macintosh says, similarly, sounds like you are progressing very well in your Bitcoin journey. Macintosh. 2,100 sats sent using Fountain.
Hosted the Generation Bitcoin podcast. One, if you want to know more about the tech and news side of things, that's the place to go.
Beauty. So that's the boots there for us. So in terms of, you were talking about the the various platforms that are available to participants or to users. Here's another not problem, because this kind of already exists in today's world. As in, I exclusively listen to it on Spotify. Let me be clear. Music, I pay for YouTube Music, as we do.
Yeah.
And I listen to that, and that's fine. I'm happy to pay YouTube Music and to do that. But it is one location where I can find everything that I need. There's a very good reality that in these new availabilities and platforms, I might not be able to find everything I need all in the one location. And I go, that's kind of real shit. I don't want that. I want to have one stop all. I don't want to have to go to multiple places. Like I want to be serviced well here. I don't want to be like, oh, I've got to go do this app for this thing, and I want to go and do that. Generally, for me, I don't know if this is sentiment for other meme lights. I want to have less apps on my phone. I don't want to have more. I want to have less.
Yeah.
Less. The less I have, the better. What's my incentive to have more?
For you,
more
there's
different
none. And this is where, once again, I don't know who is more reflective of the general population, you or me, when it comes to these sort of things, because
it might be neither.
probably because no, there's no reason for you to want. There's like you personally don't do any of the value for value boosting and things like that. You know, a lot of the shows that you listen to don't have that enabled, although some do. What Bitcoin did does have that. You could be sending him sats, Peter McCormick, if you wanted to, but you choose not to. So
in that space though, you could do it to, so like say, just stick with Peter McCormick for a moment, because this kind of plays with musicians as well. I could, but you know, the caller would be, hey, I'd love to send him a comment and for him to read it out. He doesn't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
His podcast does. He is value for value enabled, but he isn't going to read squat shit that you sent him.
Yeah.
So
once again,
where's the value in the user sending that?
Is there any incentive for you of feeling good because you supported your favorite artist? If you were streaming him sats, is that an incentive enough to feel good?
If it was something that was enabling him to keep on going, or enabling them to keep on going, absolutely. But say, given for Peter McCormack, and he runs ads, and he's got people paying for the podcast, I go, not really. That's what you're basically, you know, you're paying in that way so that you can provide something to me.
Yeah. Look, I don't know if you've maybe you're thinking of how much I think value for value would change the world. I think it would change it 10%, but that 10% would make like a huge fucking difference to a lot of people. Is roughly what I'm sort of thinking. The reason I particularly pick on Spotify is because I think it's a fuck company just in general, not just for the value for value music. That's kind of even if that wasn't coming up, I think they would probably struggle. But you as the user, it's definitely something that's going to require that extra step of you wanting to support. And once again, not even 10%, 4%. That's what Adam Curry says of who boost into his show or support his show. It's 4% monetarily, and then there's, you know, a lot greater percentage doing it in non-monetary ways. So I just think it would probably be roughly the same for musicians. There's going to be a lot of people like you and me, for certain musicians as well, who I just want to play it in the background, and I don't care. I have no attachment between me and the musician. I'm just looking for lo-fi. I'm just looking for whatever. But there's probably some who I would want to have that greater connection with, and this is where I think value for value steps in and does a much better job than any of the current ways that they can connect.
Can you give me an example for listeners at home? So just stay on that. So let's say, there might be an artist that you want to connect with closer, that you would want to support. Is that because the musician is small enough that when they see that, maybe that message go through, they can go, oh, you know, really appreciate that from that individual? Would you still do it if they're, you know, essentially making millions a month, and it's just a drop in the ocean of your support?
This is where I look at what Adam Curry is doing, and you know, they cap it. They only read a certain extent of messages that come in because they just get so many, and that cap is a relatively high cap. It's like 133 US or something, and the ones underneath that, they just don't have time to get to. Still, a lot of people. I don't know the numbers. I would maybe be worth asking him when I next chat to him what that kind of hidden percentage is underneath, and if that's larger or less. But I think there is something to if they're super big. I don't know, but human behavior is weird, man. People will send you through stuff for random reasons. They will, if you ask in a certain way, if you do things in a certain way.
But usually, and stick with it here. Usually, and this comes to the behavior of consumers, is because they get something in return.
Mm.
In most of the platforms right now, if you pay in a super fan method, which is what's called in most places, you get something that essentially either from a virtual signaling perspective, from a you can see it because you're receiving something, you're basically paying for something. In this model, in the way that you're articulating as it stands right now, you're getting nothing. Like there's zero things you're getting. It's just you're helping support that. Like and like you're articulating here in that podcast at a certain range, we're not going to read it. For you and me, if we're listening to, say, a really great musician on value for value music that they get a ton load, we might send them some dollarinos and satoshis through. They don't know. They'll never see it. They'll never respond.
Yeah.
It'll just go into the pile of big money. But and here's a differentiator, which I think most people, they want to get something for what they pay. They want to get something delta difference than what you're already getting, the music. Things like YouTube does it in the way that you get a little super fan sticker name on it, and you can comment sometimes on some of the lives that they do that other people can't. I know there's other places like Pandora Music that gives you other secretive things, and this is not, again, there's not a hit on value for value because value for value music potential, because as you've said, I think it services 10% of the larger pot. And so we're not saying here that it has to service every single possibility and endless, because as you're describing through it more and more, I'm kind of getting a picture of like, okay, cool. I see where it's beneficial to the 10%, where right now you're just stuffed in the current model. Like there is no hope for you.
Yeah.
But in this mode, you can make a living.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things where that could change that. And some of this will just straight up require time. So let's imagine in 5 years' time that Ainsley Costello makes it big. Let's say she has a hit that actually makes it onto the radio stations proper. She's a breakout artist in the actual in the mainstream world. Let's say it like that.
And through what method?
And through just putting her music on Spotify, on TikToks, it gets a replay or something like that. All that sort of thing. What value would there be for me for connecting with her when she was a no name nothing? I'll send her a message and she'd be like, you were one of the first people to support me, that sort of deal. So that's like one of the long-term payoffs that you could potentially see. I've got a couple of extra points here of, have you heard of sound.xyz?
I believe I have.
Yeah. So this is basically a platform where artists will create NFTs and kind of sell those NFTs to their fans. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole ranking system of this person supported this many artists. They bought this many of their songs. They bought it at this price. It's kind of a way of like being that super fan who was getting all the early vinyls, who was buying the crappy Mere Mortals merch. Well, not crappy. It's a fucking awesome shirt. But buying that first shirt when it was, they were nothing, that sort of deal. I don't see why that sort of behavior can't make it onto. And now there's a whole problem with NFTs, and are people actually paying them? How much of this is just for the virtue signaling? Is that a long-term scalable thing? Kind of, there is a value in being the person who has one of the first Metallica, what do they call it? The EPs, or like one of their first debut thing, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and in all of these things you're listing, they're either a tangible or an intangible asset that you can verify or show proof that you were the first one.
Yeah, and so I don't see why you can't have a ranking system. It's kind of there on Wavelake. If you go into one of Ainsley Costello's songs, you see the people who've boosted the most. They're kind of the top comments. So there is like a little bit of that already. I can see that getting much better just through better apps being developed. Pod fans, with Sam, he's really focused on the gamifying things. We'll see how that plays out, which is he's going like all in on that gamification sort of numbering systems of really showcasing that activity, highlighting things like that. Let's see what happens with that. But I think there's all sorts of ways where it could satisfy those things which have been proven time and tested in the music industry before technology of CDs and things like that, where you can get that interaction from the artist. And just now with digital money, there's just no restrictions on it has to be
how you
this
obtain
amount. Yeah, that sort of deal.
So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm sold. Karen sold me. Awesome. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go download all of the most famous songs out there over the past 40 years. I'm going to upload them into Valley Music, and I'm going to get all the money coming from. And I'm going to pretend that I'm Metallica and I am Avril Lavigne and I'm whoever else.
Yeah, this is the
tell me about the problem here. How would that get dealt with?
Yeah, honestly, man, this is what I imagine it was like when Napster was kind of coming on the scene. You know, they're stealing all the Metallica songs, they're putting it online, people are downloading tens and thousands of music tracks that they haven't bought, and it's just absolute mayhem. And you saw the music industrial complex was not happy with that. They were like, fuck this, let's sue some people. And so they sued a bunch of people. But you know, you can't stop torrenting. just try and stop that. I think probably similar things will happen. People will put up music that they shouldn't, they'll put up covers that they shouldn't, and when you're getting money from that, and that's when, I mean, look, this is where it's if it's only 4%, 10%, will the music industry care? Maybe not, probably. But it's certainly a problem, and they will, you know, if someone puts something up on Wavelake that gets a lot of money and it's not theirs, and someone comes suing or knocking on the door, like Wavelake's gonna have to answer that and be like, oh shit, yeah, you can't do that. But once again, this is kind of like the decentralized technology and stuff. You know, Wavelake could just turn off any portion that they have with regards to that, so they're not making any money. And it's like, look, this is just free open software, people using RSS. Like, you're gonna have to go shut down RSS to do this. This is where I kind of see it as like, it'll win in the long run, but there'll be pain. It'll be bloodless, hopefully. There won't be any fighting on the streets, but there'll certainly be some pain.
Yeah, okay. So I guess to that point though, there is no answer. There is no dealing with it right now as it stands.
No.
And look, and the reality is, and this is what I come to, it's just not big enough for anyone to care.
Yeah,
that is the reality as it is now. even if you were like, look, I'm telling you right now, go download some Metallica legally, go put it up on there. You're not gonna make that much money, right? For anyone to care. So maybe it's a good like side gig until it becomes too big, and then you're gonna get found out. But you're probably gonna get found out pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, even at this small stage, if you were doing that, you'd get called out. A lot of value for value is about reputation as well. So it's about not doing things. You know, most people will do the right thing, and those bad eggs who do that, you can hide for a little bit, but it won't take long for you to get found out, and then you'll have to move on, because you'll get barred from, you know, posting stuff on Wavelake, or, you know, and there's ways around this, sure, but it's that kind of cat and mouse game, which always seems to play and happen. In terms of, you were talking about the I just want to go somewhere, I want all the music. One of the things that's, I think, is really good for this is just discoverability as well, of finding new music. You don't particularly care about finding new music, do you? It's just like, if it happens, it happens.
Yeah, exactly. Or, you know, if our bill is into a mix of YouTube music or somewhere else, and it just pops up into a new song that's relative about the same thing, I'll be like, all right, cool.
Yeah. A lot of people do care about that. I'm kind of 50-50, half on the fence. I wouldn't say I actively go out and search, but I keep my ears tuned for if something catches my attention, I'll kind of follow that rabbit hole a little bit. This is where it's definitely you can discover some cool things on there, and there's the music itself is good and is just as likely to get stuck in your head. Once again, personal behavior here. There was a couple of songs, Sugar Baby by Bobby Shell, Cherry on Top. There was a couple of others. They are just as I over these last months, I've noticed myself humming them along just as much as I would of something like "You Right" by Doja Cat in The Weekend, which has been stuck in my head recently. So it's got that discoverability of you can find those new things if you're looking for it, and it's a pretty good way of doing it. This is where the kind of radio shows once again will come into it, because the radio stations now, how well do they serve that purpose? Okay, I guess, but there's a whole industry behind that, and a lot of money in kind of the negative sense of the money of if I pay this much to this company, if to this radio station, they'll put the song on for this amount of time, or promote it in this way, that sort of deal. So yeah, I don't know. I suppose just in a little sum up for me, it just feels like the industry is ripe for a switch. It seems like there's too many problems, and the disfaction is maybe a too powerful force to be ignored. And even just looking at the money side of things, I was looking this up. So for podcasting, advertising in podcasting is about $2 billion US a year. The music industry is worth something like 26 billion, something like that. So it's 10 times more valuable in that sense, but the musicians get 10 times less than what podcasters do. That just doesn't seem to like add up in my brain of, okay, well, something is probably going to change
10 times less through the utilization of the same platforms.
So I guess so, yeah. If you,
I mean, it makes total sense though, right? It makes total sense for me and from a business perspective though, right?
Why?
Like, I don't understand when sometimes people say it doesn't make sense, because there's different ways that money's made in the thing that you're taking action with. With a podcast, money is paid traditionally. Podcast is paid out through injected advertising or advertising in general, which you then get a cut because someone's taking an action. So it's the probability that a listener will take an action on the advertised thing for you to go and make that money in return.
Yeah.
Whereas with music, it's injected ads in between music through a Spotify, or in displayed ones if you're somewhere else. And then there's a much lower probability that people are clicking on it and making that money, because that's essentially how money's being made, or data being sold off in other ways,
or just straight up memberships.
But the return on money is lower on music than the return on what a one podcast with an action to be made, right? Like you talk at the same plays of a Tim Ferriss episode and him requesting, having like 5 ads in there of you should go do something. I'd bet you the amount of actions people take off that versus the same as a song that just gets played that many times with just an ad appearing on the screen, there's going to be different triggers. And so I see why there's differentiation on the multiples between an industry getting 2 bill and another one getting 26 bill.
Yeah, look, the music industry as well probably encapsulates live music. Although I don't know, that seems like such a low number. I don't know if it's because I'm listening to so much.
I would say that's too low. Then I would say that's way too low.
Yeah, because I don't know if it's just like listening to Bitcoin podcasts, and some of them are financial, but like even $1 trillion doesn't seem that much to me anymore. I'm like, it's just $1 trillion, So
I don't know. I'd question that, because that was something in the back of my mind that I go, like, logically that makes sense. There's a reason why. Yeah, it's like when you get into conversations as to, why does people in this sports get paid this much, and then the others, whether it's it's the female team, or whether it's soccer versus water polo. Well, it also depends who the advertisers are, how many people are watching, who's getting paid what percentage, right? That all matters. You can't all of a sudden just expect that, if for some reason, I don't know how, but if you're listening to music and it triggered people to click on an ad every time you're watching it or something, now that would become really annoying. And I feel like people wouldn't use it because it's a usable thing. But you sure as hell are going to be making a lot more money for the platforms, and then they could probably distribute more money. But it comes with a more painful user experience for users, which I bet you right now they just wouldn't accept.
Yeah. Here we go. Spotify generated 8.46 billion in revenue from premium subscribers in 2021, and then another 1.2 in advertisement. So look, at the very least, like in terms of the premium things, that's 8 billion, which is dwarfing the podcasting 2 billion of advertising. So that's one where it's like, wouldn't that make even more sense that the musicians should be making more because the money is already like being injected in? It's not based on probabilities anymore. It's just being forced into the system right at that go. I don't know. In any case, there's there does seem to be, in my mind, it seems to mismatch that musicians are getting 10x less, just in terms of like the effort it requires to create music, to make an album. How does that compare to a podcast? How do people feel from podcasting versus music? You know, if you gun to the head said to someone, you can never listen to music again, or you can never listen to podcasts, what are they going to choose? Most people would say, like, get rid of the podcast. I want music. So yeah, all that sort of thing. Yeah, I think there was new styles and stuff too that would emerge. We already talked a little bit about the NFTs. That's, once again, it's like a spectrum. It's kind of value for value, but you don't get to choose the. Maybe if it was an NFT and you got to choose the amount that you put in, I don't know. But I think something will change. It's kind of like just my little thing. And little side story here. So we played music as our intro music for these musings, and I think for the monthly goals as well, from this band called Signs of New Growth. And basically the only request they had for us doing it, when I was chatting with them a year and a half ago, something like that, was that we put in a link to their Mastodon. And so that's been in our show notes for ages. And I was like, oh, you know what? Like, what the hell? Why have I not included them on the splits, or like even just a 1% split or something like that? Because it's only a little bit of the music. I tried to find them on the Mastodon. They're gone, man. Like, I don't know where it's happened. Like, so we've just had this dead link in the show notes for ages. And even the guy, I think his name was Anthony Bellardi. I don't know how to find him on the internet. I did a bit of a search. So you could say like, oh, Karen, you talk about V4V music, but you're not even doing it on your own fucking show. Well, that's the reason there. So just in sum up, I'm excited. It's changed my behavior. I listen to a lot more of these songs, and even when I do want that just general playlist in the background music, I've been going on to places and just, putting my sat streaming on and just letting it play, and it's sending small micropayments to, just because it made me feel good, not because I need any of that recognition or anything. I think it will certainly become bigger than what it is now, which is nothing, much like the podcasting has in the last 2 years, going from 60,000 a day to whatever it is now. I think it's like 1.2 million, and even then I feel it's still early days for podcasting and value for value through Bitcoin. So I think the same sort of thing. I think something will happen, and I'm willing to bet it's value for value, which is why I had that little Spotify bet thing. I didn't get into it, man, but I think there's so much just wrong with Spotify as a company that it's.
I think in summary for me, I think that there's absolutely things wrong right now in the payment model for artists and the amount that get taken from them. It's also a buildup of what the existing, and you got to be clear here, what people are willing to put their money to and pay for, right? If Spotify or other platforms decided, like, you know what, yeah, we need to pay artists more, we're going to increase everything that we charge by 10x or 100x, and we're going to pay them correctly. Guess what? Probably no one's going to be paying for that shit unless you're fucking rich, right? So that's what's going to happen. But I think so. I think for me, in summary, I see the value for value music. I see the percentage of people who would actually be really supported by that. But broadly, do I see it being the king taker of a lot of other things right now, nah, not a chance. Especially for me, I see no value for me ever
Yeah, well,
using value for value
that's
music
fine.
at all. And I would be really, really interested to hear from others as they listen to this where you sit on that boundary, because like I can't picture in my mind humans who will listen to who will use this platform or who will want to use it. I can get so behind it in the podcasting model, but I can only by a very scarcity see it working in the value for value music model. And so I want to hear how this is gonna I want to see more proof and see it more working through as a, oh no shit, this is the next thing, versus the other potentials of I know X at the moment is going down the path of increasing the amount that it's paying to its creators. Is there going to be other ways that not just call it musicians anymore, but just creators in general, which could be music as well? You just get paid more fairly in a more distributed amount of platforms, social platforms or others, where you then start making up enough money versus just being a one particular platform being that value for value model.
Check out the next
It also comes
value for value
it also
episode.
it also
We're
comes
doing
it also
exactly
comes
like
with the
this.
mentality as well that I haven't really looked into it as much, right? Like I haven't gone into it to go, okay, well, I want to really dig into the data, dig into the musicians that are in there and to listen to them. So there's very strong caveats into all that I'm saying. But I would still say, to your bet, in a few years' time, I just think, man, something's gonna have to happen to Spotify and Apple Music and a few others, because
No.
things
Spotify,
are gonna go to
only
shit.
Spotify. This is all I'm talking about.
Okay, just
Apple,
Spotify. Look,
YouTube
I think
Music,
Spotify's
that
gonna
sort of
have to.
stuff is
I think
very different.
Spotify's gonna have to for sure evolve in some ways to compete with everything, or die just a kind of slow death or just slow bleed by money. But right now, as it stands, do I see it being value for music? Nah, not yet.
When we were talking about Spotify on a Meanderings episode, and I first came up with this bet, which was, I don't know, a month or two ago, did it surprise you how many Spotify users actually paid for premium? Did that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Why does that make sense to you, but that people would pay for that, but they wouldn't pay for music in another way, I guess is my question.
Because it removes ads.
That's the only thing. That's the
honestly, yeah, just people paying because they'd be like, I want to listen to this, like the ad coming up every 4 songs, so pay for it.
Yeah, so they're paying for a better experience.
And the ability, I think it does have some extra features and functionalities with the paid one.
Yeah, so they're paying for a better experience. I think you can get that better experience on a good value for value music app as well.
Yeah, and that might be the key. If there's if there was a real feature defining thing that goes, like at the moment, again, we say we pay for YouTube Music and I pay for it because I don't have to listen to any ads. I can go to anything.
Yeah.
If there was some sort of feature out there that for me as a user was so fundamentally better, I'd go, well, of course, why wouldn't I just go use that?
Yeah. It surprised me when that number came up. So just for people who are wondering, there's 551 million active users, monthly active listeners, and 220 of them. So, just less than half paid for the premium. That surprised me. That seemed like kind of like surprised me in a good way, to be honest, because I was like, oh wow, there's a lot more people who are willing to pay for this than I thought. That's a lot more people who are willing to, not deal with ads than I thought, which probably has some good benefits for podcasting, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing. It's definitely like a good thing because maybe, I would love to know. I mean, I guess there's more commentary on for people. It's like, are you just paying it for the ads? Or are you paying for the functionality that Spotify allows you to have in terms of creating playlists?
Yeah.
And all of that, because then if it is, again, it comes through. All of these companies have a lot more money and a lot quicker to be able to create some of these things. What's stopping some of these bigger places from absorbing the utilization of V4V?
I just don't think they won't. It's too scary. I think it's too. Yeah, I'll be surprised if they do. I'll be surprised if they do.
Mm. Yeah. So yeah, it always sits in two cases here, and it's either are they just stupid? Is the entire music platform creators platform stupid that they're not picking this up and they're just idiots because they're not going to get into it, or is it that it's a risky bet that might or might not play out?
Yeah, or it's just not on their radars. You know, Bitcoin wasn't on a lot of people's radars until recently, and it's still not on a lot of people's radars. So, and same for AI, same for whatever new thing is coming down the pipeline. Just another little funny side note here. I've been doing some investigations of other book reviews, and 3 of the podcasts that I was trying out, and I literally just typed book reviews into a podcasting app. I think how many of them? It was at least 2 where they started off with an ad. That was the very first thing I got, and I was just like, yeah, just disgusted, just absolutely disgusted. Like what a way to for a new
What a horrible way to introduce me to your
exactly
podcast.
right. Yeah, about a minute worth.
Damn.
So yeah, this is a long episode. Let's wrap it up. Thank you everyone for tuning into Value for Value show about Value for Value music, the Mere Mortals. If you have any, we want to hear your thoughts on just a couple of things we mentioned. Then, do you think that people will be willing to pay for music in this manner? Is there that need for connection with their favorite artists? What were some of the other things that we're discussing? One, do they I suppose it's more just like, do you think Value for Value music will take off? Is Spotify doomed? Or any of these would be a great way to
We're gonna get that trending. Spotify's doomed or something like
that. Poor Daniel Ek. If he takes the bet against me, maybe he'll he's screwed either way. Then he'll lose some Bitcoin.
In any case, yes. So we are, of course, a Value supported podcast. So that's you're able to send through time, talent, or treasure to us. Obviously giving it the time or sharing it with others is really a thing that we cherish, and thank you for your support in that way. You can also send through some talent, aka we're asking you questions, respond to them in all the different ways that you can.
If you're a musician,
that's
an
email if you want to.
Very important
musician, tell us shit. Maybe we should, if you're a musician who wants to have an interview or conversation to kind of share more, if you've gone really well in Value for Value, even better. Fucking let's talk about it. Or treasure. You can send through directly a Boostergram to us. We called them out during the Boostergram Lounge during these live sessions. But it's the way that you can support us very directly with comments and Satoshis sent through directly to our accounts. Right. So that's the way that we try to continue with this podcast here as well.
Exactly. Thank you, Juan. All
right, Mere Mortals, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Once again, live at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday. For now, Mere Mortals, one out.
Karen out.
Good.
Alrighty. Thank you, Juan. Apologies. That was a long one. Jeez.
That was a long boy.
Yeah, boy. Let me just stop it here. See everyone. Thanks for joining. Sorry if you've left YouTube comments. I didn't even go to the right place. I didn't even check if the YouTube's still going. Hopefully it is. Patricia was there. Thank you, Patricia. All right. Ciao.